you're talking in this way, but you come from a background that doesn't speak that. I mean, that's almost like the background here in the States where you're so driven, you're pushing, you're competitive, and it's always about winning and winning. Your background doesn't say that. Where you're from, it's more about humility.
Yes,
and surviving in that way. So where does that come from? Was that just innate in you? I know you said your grandfather, and your dad, but where does that burn deep into you? Because you're competitive.
Oh yeah,
at heart.
I've never lost a thing ever.
Right.
Yeah, not once.
Not once.
Not once. Not once.
Okay.
No. I think it was developed. I don't think it was something that I just had. I think it's something.
When do you remember when that started?
The most intense time in my life in terms of when I grew the most and when I learned the most about myself was when I had, I know you don't want to get there quite yet, but after I'd moved over to Seattle, I'm still in a 100% commission-based role and my visa's tied to the company. So if I get fired, so if I miss my number, I get fired.
Okay.
If I get fired, I'm out.
Right.
There's no go down the street and shop for sponsorship at another company.
Right.
It's either you hit your number or you're deported.
Okay.
So that weight hanging over me of the last thing I want to do, and I remember thinking this every single month it was coming up as we were closing out. I do not want to go back home with my tail between my legs saying to my family I failed.
Man.
And I also knew that if I didn't make it this time, what's the likelihood that I was going to go home, pick myself up, and do it again?
Right.
I just thought, and I mean, it's called one shot, right?
Yeah.
I literally thought that. This is the one shot that I have. And so it was that desire to not get kicked out of the greatest country on earth and go back to New Zealand with all the sheep that I'm like, I have to give it everything. And so I think a lot of it was birthed out of that deep insecurity of I have to give it all.
So it's interesting because I think in our culture, like today, right, leading by fear sometimes is like shunned. It's like you can't. No. But we talk about it all the time. The reason the 90s Cowboys are different than current day Cowboys, and I'm part of the current day Cowboys, I associate with that, is that there was there was a significant amount of fear that if I didn't show up every day and give everything that I had, I'm not going to have a job tomorrow. I lived that way in my career just because I wasn't good enough and I was on the bubble every single day. Like, all right, it's Tuesday. Can we cut Tyler today? Dang, he showed up again. So it's frowned upon in like this, like, hey, make everybody feel good culture that we're in right now. There's some legitimate like reasons to have an element of fear, have some nervousness that when I show up, I've got the adrenaline because it's like, I can't go back.
I couldn't agree more. 2 weeks ago, we kicked off our financial year.
Yeah.
We had the company sitting down and we did a panel. One of the staff asked me, what motivates you most? What motivates you to come to work every single day? And I thought about giving a fluffy answer.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't I just tell the truth for once and see how this lands in the room? I was like, well, this is going to be awkward, but the honest answer is the biggest thing that gets me coming to work is not letting you all down.
Yeah.
And that keeps me up at night, that I'm going to be the reason why we're not successful, that I'm going to be the reason why we don't hit our numbers, that I'm going to be the reason why we don't raise this next round.
Yeah.
And so I just told the room, I'm like, that's what motivates me.
Yeah.
And there are other things, mission we just talked about, all those other things, but that motivates me probably the most. I just don't want to be the bottleneck.
So through like I don't want to say fear because I don't, and I know you well enough. I don't know you real well, but it doesn't feel like you lead with fear and you're fearful all the time. But in the grind, because you're definitely in a grind phase, do you find joy throughout the day, or is it because there's that balance? Like, oh, I need to change careers because I never find joy. I think if you're only looking to be happy all the time when you work, you're missing out on a lot. Because hey, look. If you embrace the grind, if you embrace the hard times, you're like, look, I know that I'm not going to be happy, and I'm looking forward to it.
Agreed. Here's the thing I tell myself to keep my sanity throughout the day. I say, if you're not laughing, you're crying.
Yeah.
Because if you lean into what's really happening and you stop and someone's like, so how was your day? Good. How was it really? I don't know if I want to talk about it. What happened? And you start to go through everything that happened, and then you start to realize, oh wow, that was a really bad quote unquote day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it wasn't, because you didn't make it a bad day, because you just brushed it off and said, if I'm not treating it with this sort of lightheartedness, then I'm going to be in a pit of despair.
Yeah.
And I've been there too.
No, see, and I love, and that's a great point. I love when, when people, Darren's good at this, is like, when you look at somebody and you ask that question you just asked. And I think that one of the things that you guys do in your model is that in training leaders to be better leaders is like having and asking those questions.
Of course.
And asking like, no. How are you really? Because men, what do we do? Like, oh, that's great.
Great.
Dude, I'm on that grind, dude. Hey, another day in paradise, brother. Like the cliche office answer, right? And when someone actually stops, like, no, how's it going? It's super awkward when people do that to you.
Awkward.
Right.
But it's needed, right? Yeah. It's needed because, again, if nothing else, it forces a person to self-reflect a little bit more.
Agreed.
Right? And say, okay, hey, what phase am I in right now? What's it like? How was today? How did I perform? How am I ending the day?
So true.